Welcome to the Branford Camera Club monthly meeting. This month's monthly meeting is by Sebastian Talley. Sebastian is a 15-year-old who has been creating his own videos for the past 3 years. He runs his own company called Meant to Be Media, where he creates the videos you need for success. Through his endeavors, he's been able to work with all sorts of projects, weddings, concerts, and even created an award-winning short film entitled Lost. The bulk of his work consists of managing social media channels and creating ads for businesses. This meeting will provide a crash course on how to film a video utilizing nothing more than a photo camera, touching on subjects like the settings, tips, and tricks to obtain amazing footage. Now here's Sebastian.
Sebastian Talley with an E. I always forget the E. So what I'm going to do is, rather than tell you all about it, I'm going to read it so I don't miss anything. I am a 15-year-old entrepreneur, and I have been creating for 3 years. I run a company called Meant to Be Media, where we create the videos that you need to succeed. Through this journey, I have been able to work on all sorts of projects, from weddings to concerts, and even creating an award-winning short film called Lost. Is that the one we saw? Lost? Yeah. Okay. It was an excellent, for any that didn't see it. The bulk of my work is from managing social media channels and creating ads for business. My goal, Meant to Be Media, is to provide real value to all our clients. My presentations will be a crash course on how to film video in your photo camera. Sebastian?
Just gonna get this set up real quick.
Already having technical difficulties.
Here we go. Well, thank you guys so much for coming here tonight. I'm super excited to see, as he said, we're going to be taking your photo camera and turning it into a video camera tonight.
I think you need to turn the TV on again, Sebastian.
I gotcha. Alright, there we go. So before we begin, after each segment, I'll ask if there's any questions you guys have for it, and if I'm talking too quiet, let me know. Alright? So for tonight's meeting, we're going to go over the 6 steps to turn your photo camera into a video camera. So the first thing is frame rates and shutter speed. The second is stabilization. The third is focus. 4 is audio. 5 is composition. And 6 is edit and export. The first one we're going to touch on is frame rates and shutter speeds. So when we take our cameras from photo to video, we have to think about the frame rate. And what the frame rate is how many pictures is it taking a second. So the most common is 24 frames, so it would be 24 frames a second. And that's what you're going to see in most Hollywood films, most videos, YouTube, social media, whatever it may be. That's what typically they're filming in. And it's going to have the most natural motion blur, so our eye is going to closely match that. And then we have 30 frames a second. This is for more of like sports, broadcasting, stuff like that. It's going to be slightly smoother with a little less motion blur. So great for something like football where you're throwing the ball and you want to be able to actually see it, not just this big blur. And we have 60 frames a second. So 60 frames is going to be super smooth, almost no motion blur. But what we use 60 frames for is to slow down the footage and post. And so that's how you get slow-mo. And it can go on and on up to 1,000 frames a second. It gets super intense. The next thing is shutter speed. So we all know shutter speed when we're taking a photo, but for video, it needs to double the frame rate. And what I mean by that is, if you're filming at 24 frames, your shutter speed needs to be 1/50, or if you're in 60 frames, it needs to be 1/120. We also call this the 180-degree rule. Does anyone have any questions about that?
That makes sense.
Awesome.
You can do these things with your camera?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
any modern DSLR, mirrorless camera, even on iPhones and Androids. So this is the difference between 24 frames and 60 frames, and we'll replay the video when it stops. So as you can see with 24 frames, if you look at her hand, it's much more natural to how our hands are moving. But then when we look over at the 60 frames a second version, her hand, there's a lot less motion blur in that. And so currently the 60 frames a second video isn't slowed down. No, that's still playing on, still playing out the 24 frames, but like I said, a lot less motion blur.
Sebastian?
Yes.
Is there a difference, what's with the difference of the lighting?
Oh,
I've seen?
The lighting, so the lighting was just because it was so bright outside I couldn't crank my f-stop down any lower.
Okay.
But so, and this is what the shutter speed has to affect. So if we play 1/150, not 150, 1/50 at 24 frames a second, it looks pretty natural to what our human eye sees. But then when we do 1/15, it's very jittery. I mean, almost unusable.
Is it just because the time of day too, does that have an effect?
No, so the clip is brighter, just because of how bright it was. So when I cranked the shutter speed up, there was nothing I can do except for apply an ND filter, which I didn't have at the time, to make the clip darker. That's always how it's going to look because yes.
Can you go to a higher shutter speed in those bright conditions?
Yes,
Okay.
and so and we'll get a little bit into like messing up the settings later. But
I'm good.
yeah. So but great question. We are able to adjust it further. I never recommend going lower than the requirement, but I would go higher. So personally, I don't even film at 1/150. I'll usually film at 1/160. Just because my personal preference, I think it looks a little more realistic, but this is just kind of what the base is. But like I said, I typically don't film underneath it because if we look at this again, it just looks jittery. It looks just choppy. I would say, in my opinion, like I said, unusable. Next, we move on to stabilization. So when we're filming, you're adding another level. We're adding movement. So when you're taking a photo, I mean, it's just still, you're just focused on that one moment, right? So when we do video, and especially if you're making a video that's 5, 10 minutes long, or even an hour, I mean, you gotta make sure that it's not super jittery and shaky. So we use equipment like tripods, or most commonly used, this is a gimbal. So this stabilizes 3 axes of a camera, and so it allows us to get super smooth footage. And but there's one problem with this. So this is only stabilizing 3 of the 4 axes of like movement, and so that's where, and I think I'll step a little bit up here. When we're using gimbal, we're not just walking like this. We're not just walking around like this. There's actually techniques how you walk around too. So we call it the ninja walk. It's heel to foot, and then you also with a bend at your knee. So you're walking like this. Looks a little funny, but it's basically taking out all of this, all of the up and down, and helping the video to be more stable. Or if you are like me, you can wear a huge, well, I want to try one out, but there's these huge vests that attach, and there's this big arm that sticks out that stops that, so you can walk normal. You have to be careful though. My personal rig is about, I think it was 17 or 18 pounds, and so you hold that for an entire wedding day, and then your back hurts. So, gotta be careful like how heavy this stuff can get, especially for filming for long times. There is another option. This one you all could do without having to purchase any extra equipment. I call it the camera strap method. So I'll take my camera here. I'll attach it really quickly. Alright, 1 second.
What is that strap called?
This is called the Peak Design strap. It's it allows me to take the actual.
You have a speed limit for it?
This is much faster than if you were trying to put on a normal one. But yeah, it can definitely be
Quick snap.
cumbersome. But I keep these on all my cameras so I can just put the camera strap back on. So what you do if you're gonna film handhelds and you don't have a gimbal at your disposal, you take it, you have the camera strap, and then you push the camera out as far as you can. So what's happening is I'm creating tension, which doesn't allow it to move, and I can, again, apply the ninja walk, and it's gonna be as stable as you pretty much can for a handheld shot. There's one final technique you can use. Most modern cameras, especially iPhones and Androids, it's very prominent. They have in-body stabilization, or IBIS, where it's actually the sensor's actually moving around to compensate for some of that. This camera specifically I have here has 8 stops of IBIS, so I have filmed many shoots handheld actually with this. I'm pretty comfortable with it. It does take some practice, but you don't have to get overwhelmed with all of the extra stabilization stuff. If you're ready and willing to practice, you can very easily film handheld and get some really great stuff. And then, so stark contrast from this one. This one, the way we stabilize this one is.
Hello and welcome to the mental health hotline.
So sorry.
John, that cold.
You've seen that dramatic.
So this one does not have IBIS. There's nothing happening to stabilize the footage. So the way this one is stable when I'm handheld is because of the weight. I think I weighed this as about 12 pounds, and so when I press the battery pack against my chest, that also can really help it stabilize. So if your camera doesn't have IBIS, you can attach a weight of some kind, or as like this is all just equipment that makes it this heavy. So those are some options to keep the footage stable.
What kind of head do you have on that tripod?
This is a fluid head tripod, meant specifically for video, because if I loosen it right here and loosen it right here, you can see I've got a handle at the back, and it allows me to move fluidly though, as some other tripods it can be, a little bit more stuttery, which for photo, it's obviously fine, but yeah, for video we want a fluid
Fluid head.
yeah, fluid head. And then, so this tripod actually specifically, I think a lot of, at least what I was told going into like the film industry is that like you need to buy some like $2,000-$3,000 tripod. I absolutely don't think that's the case. I think this one specifically costs about $120. Like you don't need to spend that much. So I don't know where that comes from really, because I've seen great results with this. All right. And so now we are going to move on. So the next clip I'm going to show, these are some examples of handheld and then me using that specific gimbal there. So you can see even me, like walking, handheld is going to be really hard regardless. And you can see some big stutters there, especially because our yard is very uneven, as opposed to the gimbal looks fairly smooth overall. I mean, I personally can see some jitters, but that would be in my own technique, not necessarily the tool. And then if we look back at handheld, it's not, I mean, in that part it's pretty bad, but so like I said, you can kind of pick and choose your battles, and then shooting handheld, you can be, you got to think a different way though as well. So like a shot like that, I would never attempt handheld, but something I would attempt handheld would be, for instance, if I was going to film the gimbal, I wouldn't probably walk up to it if I was filming it, because we do want to add movement shots, and we'll touch on that a little later, but I would, probably have the camera strap on, bring it out, and then I wouldn't walk necessarily, I would just shift myself. If I wanted to get a push-in shot to something, or someone, I would probably shift, not actually move with handheld stuff. Alright, any questions regarding that? Or anything? Anything? No? Awesome, okay. The next thing is focus. So, with photo, in this common theme, with photo, it's just that one moment, right? I mean, even if you're shooting sports or anything like that, yeah, there's more movement, but it's just kind of capturing that moment. So, nailing focus is a lot easier with photo. So, with video, we have two options. We have autofocus or continuous autofocus, which this camera right here has, and most cameras do at this point. This is Canon's dual pixel autofocus, so very reliable, I can trust it. You have to really test for yourself whether your camera has reliable autofocus, with, just case scenarios, because what's happening is instead of just, nailing focus for that one shot, a subject could be moving around the frame, going in and out, forward, back from the camera, different planes of focus. So we have to be prepared to keep them in focus or, the shot won't turn out the best. So, like I said, autofocus, especially for beginners, is a great, great tool as long as it's reliable. And for the most part, these days, autofocus is going to work great anyways. And I'm sure most of you guys use autofocus even in photography. So with manual focus, you're going to have the most fine-tuned control. You can really dial it in, and you can do something called a focus rack, where you shift mid-shot from the focus to another object. I'm sure you guys have seen it in movies where, you see the frame, and you see the gimbal at first, and everything else in the background's blurry, but then they shift focus, and then you can see the background. So you'll have more fine-tuned control with that, but it is harder because you're going to be on your thing like this the entire time. There are other tools to help with this instead of having to hold it out like that to focus while you're filming, but my personal recommendation would be, if you can, stick to autofocus and know enough about manual focus that if a situation arises, you could handle it. But yeah, like I said, I typically just rely on autofocus. Okay, so any questions about that? Or any, no. Awesome, okay. Alright, audio is another beast of its own. I mean, it could deserve its own 100-hour conversation. I mean, when we talk about video, it's not just actually moving pictures. We are also adding audio. So it can make or break a video. So you could have the best visuals ever, but if you have poor audio, it could really hurt the film, video, whatever it may be. And so there are onboard mics on pretty much every camera, but we call that scratch audio. We don't use that audio because it's just not to the level. It's just there to, we call it syncing in post, where we take our other mics that we use and line the audio up in post, because if not, it'd be very hard to, line up the audio. And so a couple of great pieces of equipment that I use is something like this. This is this is called a shotgun microphone, and this big fuzzy thing right here is called a dead cat.
It's called a what?
A dead cat. Yeah. Yes. And so it plugs in directly into my camera, and so I don't have to do any extra work afterwards. And this is going to be 10 times better than anything built into a camera. And yeah, so I've got it on a handle right now, but most cameras this one has no mounting on it. It just has a hot shoe. You just screw it in, and I mean, if you can get now this mic is a little bit more on the pricier side, but you can get a good lavalier or a shotgun microphone for $40, $60. So if you're looking for great audio, that would be the first thing I would invest in. If you already have the camera and a good lens, I would invest in audio. It's super important to get a high quality video overall. And then I did mention lavaliers. I'm gonna let's see. I did not bring my lavaliers. They are just have you guys ever seen the black mics that sit on people's lapels? That's what those are. So yeah, it's just super simple. Those will always have the best audio because the mic's right here, but a great example where that would not be a good decision to have is if someone had very long hair and they were running or something like that, and the mic is moving all across the lavalier mic. I mean, your audio would be ruined. It'd be worse than on the on-camera audio. Another example is I film a lot of events, and with those events, I can't take the time to go mic each person up. So this is where this mic would come in super handy because I'm just right there, and this mic is called omnidirectional. So what it's doing is it shoots audio out that way and then a little bit behind me as well. So it's going to, whatever I'm pointing at is what it's capturing. It's going to block out most of it except for directly behind the mic if someone else was speaking towards them. You can turn that off, but
How
yes,
far
sir.
does it reach?
I recommend mics like this, even ones that are more pricey. I'd recommend no more than 5 feet away for that. But typically, if you're having someone speak anyways, they typically won't be more than 5 feet away. And if they are, you probably have the opportunity to put a lavalier on them. And then the final source is called a boom pole. That is where you're going to need a multiple man crew. I don't even do that, so that's getting even more advanced, where they put the mic directly above the person. And the way our voices project, it's more like, it goes out a little bit, but only about like 3 inches, and then it goes up. If you could visualize how our voices are going. So that's the actual most ideal place. So if you ever have that opportunity, of course go for that, but that's getting a bit more advanced. So my personal recommendation is always this. It's the easiest. You just put it on your camera and then you forget about it, and it's going to be great audio. Yes, sir.
With a lavalier, I'm assuming that it would be wireless. So then the
Yes, sir.
receiver would be attached to your camera, or would you go with a separate recorder and marry it up to the film later?
That is a great question. So I use a system called the DJI mic, and it is very reliable, but sometimes it does fail me with the wireless connection. So what that one does is really cool, is it actually records and sends it wirelessly to my camera. And so I always recommend, if you have the option between wireless and recording directly to the pack, always choose recording to the pack first. And then if you're looking to get something a little bit more high-end, like the DJI system where it can do both, that's always the best option. Because 9 times out of 10, I don't have to, use the audio it recorded, but that 10th time, I'm really happy that I recorded it. And then the final tip I'll leave with you, if you are using a system like that, make sure your audio is recording. I have nightmares because I have forgotten to press record on specifically a wedding. I forgot to press record on the lavalier. Thank God I have redundancy, and so this picked up all the audio I needed, but scared me. So yeah, always make sure you're recording your audio. It's something, because it's just another step, so it sometimes gets left to the wayside. So to make sure you have that mental checklist of, if I am filming audio, let me make sure it's recording. And that's why I love this system so much too. It's just, you forget about it. It's just one less thing to think about. Yes, sir.
So David records the presentations here
Yeah.
so that we can share, because we've got folks who can't be here and they still get to participate. And so we tried using lavaliers one time, and it was great. The speaker audio was lovely,
Yeah.
Across the room here. The problem was, with I were asking a question, your lavalier isn't picking it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that mixed setting, how might you do that?
That is a great question.
That it had one receiver with 2 microphones. It's like, well, could you get that one receiver that had a handheld as well as,
Yeah, so that's going to come down to the system you choose. So personally, I do have a system that would allow me to do that, but for most systems, that wouldn't work. So what I would do in most case scenarios like that is I would mic the speaker with the lavalier, and then I would take this mic and I would set it in the middle of the room, or wherever I could get it where it's going to pick up most people. Or another great option, I did bring this, is
Maybe not.
this is what I get for reorganizing my bag a couple days ago. I apologize. It's gonna look like this. Actually, it's gonna look more like this, and it's gonna pick up 360 degrees. So I do apologize for leaving that at home, but it's gonna just pick up 360 degrees. So you could just pick up one of those and then set that where it's most convenient in the room, and it's gonna do pretty good. It's not gonna be great. You'll notice the difference between that and the speaker's mic, but it's gonna be a million times better than if you were just trying to pick up the lavalier's mic for all the other people speaking.
What
So
is that thing called?
great question.
The other 360 one, what is that?
So the brand I use is called Zoom. So it's just a Zoom recorder, or field recorder is the technical term of that device.
Would that shotgun mic on here, if they turned it towards the person speaking, even though they're speaking that way, would it pick them up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in our situation, just a shotgun on there might solve the whole problem.
Potentially, yeah. It would also have to come down to how loud they're speaking though as well, just because of how far away it is. But I think that would work just fine. It would just be if like those in the back, it's not going to do very great on those people. It's anything. It shoots out straight, but it's more like a big Y.
Yeah, well, that's where he takes the camera and points it towards the person that's speaking.
Yeah, there we go. That would work then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a dead cat that's covering the microphone. What, does that muffle something? Why is that?
Yes. Great question. So that reduces wind noise. Have you guys ever heard listening and then the yeah. This is gonna cut out a lot of it. It's not perfect, but it's gonna cut out a lot of that noise. So actually, I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually this black foam underneath it. And that is what most mics have. I purchased this dead cat separately. I just don't take it off because there's just no need. I always have it on.
Can you adjust the audio, for the receiving?
Yes. Yeah, so it could be, maybe it's hard to see. So back here, I can adjust the decibels and gain that it's taking in, but then also, see it?
So the microphone is just stuck in there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yep. And just plug it in.
Would anyone else
What's the
like
name
to
of
see
the
it?
microphone?
This is a Rode Video Mic Pro. Would anyone else like to see it?
yes.
Yes.
John, don't forget to give it back.
Pass it back here, John, pass.
So
Trudy doesn't
that
ask
is
for
it.
that.
So this,
Plugged in.
this and so not 9 times out of 10, most cameras are gonna have this port. It's just a headphone jack, but it's got the audio transfer.
So it just sets on the handle and then just plugs into the camera?
Yeah, or any hot shoe mount. So
Okay.
this handle I have just so happens to have a hot shoe mount, so I just put it on there because I've got my monitor.
Oh, I see, it's got the thing on the bottom, okay, gotcha.
Yep, absolutely.
Let me ask one more question on
Yes.
audio.
Yeah.
And this is from my own experience of screwing up and not knowing what to do about it. When you do place a lavalier, some of us have a tendency to speak from the diaphragm and project, and speak far louder than is necessary. And it blows out the recording. Okay? Is there a way to monitor that in the field so you know you're not destroying your audio? Remember I shared with you
Yes.
about the video I
Yeah.
sent, and guy really liked the guy talking birds, really liked the content, but he said the audio's horrible, and he had his sound engineer, and even they couldn't fix it.
So that is also a great question. My super high tech $5 headphones.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
So
so you just listen to the headphones.
so yeah, I
And
listen
trust
at
your
times.
business.
So with my specific system, the DJI system, it records in something called 32-bit float, and so that is the equivalent to a raw photo. I can just push it as far as I need. So they can scream or they can whisper and I can fix it. So most new recorders do that. So I don't know what model you were using specifically, but most new ones are starting to roll out with that feature.
And what's that called again?
32-bit float, and the system I use is the DJI mics. So yeah, great system, I would recommend them. But yeah, and then for monitoring audio, if I have the option, most of the time I can't because I'm running around with it, so I can't have headphones in, but if you can, just listen to that there, and if you have the ability to tell them to stop, let me fix the problem, you can do that. Alright, so any other questions regarding audio? Awesome. Alright, next is composition. I think you guys will recognize some of these terms and things like that. And I bring this back up though because when we think about composition, instead of it just being that one moment, now we have to think about what's going to happen at moment A, and then 5 seconds later what's happening in moment B, and so on and so forth. And so we want to really remember the rule of thirds. That's a huge one for me. I constantly on my monitors, I have it on the entire time because it allows me to really just kind of track and make sure that my focus and my, like, what I want the, you know, the viewers to see is really in there, so that's a huge help for me, is the rule of thirds. And then, when you have the opportunity, leading lines, natural things, just natural, and we'll examine a video clip here in a minute where it kind of takes all of these fundamentals together. Just, you know, that, you know, natural lines, it helps draw the viewer's eye to whatever you're looking at. And the next one is headroom. This one, I'll be honest, this is one I struggle with. When we don't give our talent enough headroom, and I'll also explain that later, when we don't give them enough headroom in the shot, it may feel cramped, especially because we have to be prepared for if an actor is walking or if they're moving, just because we don't want their head bouncing out of frame. And like I said, that's one that I struggle with because I always want to get it perfect, and then they may shift and then they're out, and so, like, yeah, that one's gonna be probably the trickiest one regarding that. And then adding depth. This is much more of a stylistic rule, but it's definitely my favorite. So that's where we're layering objects. You know, if I'm filming the camera back there, I may shoot and slightly have the gimbal in frame, and it's creating depth though, because we have now a foreground, something that the camera can see in front of it. But then we also have the subject in the background way back there, like that photo and stuff like that. And it's just creating a more dynamic shot. So when we keep these rules in mind, you're not going to be able to follow every single one of those for each shot. I mean, just the environments like this one specifically, there's not a lot of depth in the meaning of like anything in the foreground. There is some good depth with this sun, giving them a nice edge lighting here, and then kind of separating them from the background. But I wouldn't really call that a super, like, a lot of depth in that shot. What this does have though is like the rule of thirds. As I know there's not a grid there, but if we can imagine this was cut up into the grid of rule of thirds, their eyes would meet that top third, which is where our eyes, when we see something, naturally go to in a video. Do we have any questions regarding composition or any thoughts?
Is it probably the same rules of composition as we use in photography?
Yes.
I would think.
Yes, it is. It's just keeping in mind, like, the movement aspect of it, right? And then that's why I bring it up, just to refresh us, like when we're thinking about video, we have to add that element of movement, the constant movement of a shot. And then, so my next thing is actually regarding movement. So a great couple of things to do when starting out with movement is really not to do it. That would be my opinion. So I started off just using a tripod and just trying to create movement with the tripod, because instead of thinking about the up and down and all, like just the actual camera moving, I was just focused on just, you know, having the camera go up and down here or swiveling and that, and then I just kind of expanded from there. So if you guys are wanting more static videos in general, this isn't an issue. But if you're wanting to expand that and make a more dynamic shot, using a tripod to start to learn movement is a great way to do that. And then another very common move that we use is called a parallax, or a push in and push out. So a parallax is where whatever the subject is, and this is with handheld, this would be with the gimbal, but we're taking the camera and then we're just moving the camera around the subject. So if the camera's the subject, I'm just moving it around like that. Obviously not that fast, but I'm just moving around there. And then also, there's the push in and pull out. These three are the most common. It's the parallax, it's, you know, circling this object, but then it's also the push in and then the pull out. Those are going to be the most common shots. But like I said, I would always recommend starting with the tripod and just seeing how you can push the limits with the tripod. I've seen a lot of creators, it's very cool to see what they do. They've gone as far as to take their cameras and they're like, I've only got a tripod, but I need movement. And they'll do things that are super creative. So, let me just lock this down. I saw one creator, he took his tripod and he wanted just a really cool shot, like if he was doing this gimbal right here, and he literally picked up the tripod and was pushing in and pushing out with it, and then for his next shot he took it and he started doing the tilt, so you didn't know what it was, and then he's moving back and tilting the camera up.
Wow.
great one is actually closing on the legs, or if you have a monopod. And then you can just rock it around if you want, for just something, just for practice.
Sebastian,
yes.
sorry. How hard is it stabilizing the camera when you're trying to move the tripod to different positions, you know, up or down? How hard is it not to get like a jerky frame?
Yeah, I'm sure you like when I'm actually moving the tripod and stuff like that.
No, when you're adjusting the actual
Oh,
camera.
yeah, so
Yeah, the knob.
so I typically, if I'm filming, I'm not gonna have any of this stuff locked down to begin with. So I just unloosen everything. And what I do is, cause I don't have a sandbag on this right now, so I'll usually take my foot and I'll just place it next to the tripod leg so it won't scoot around, and then you ease into the motion. So I do that, and I'm just easing in softly, and then it also takes practice, then you can get pretty good at just grabbing the tripod and knowing when to get ready, but the biggest thing is just coming down to the fluid head itself. It's made to be smooth right out the box. So like I said, just making sure all of your stuff is unlocked and ready to go, and then ease into the movements, not as jerky. And that's where you're gonna find that super smooth look.
Are you able to do that now at, pretty much you don't even have to think about it, or
Yeah,
quick without having to stop and pause?
yeah,
the
yeah.
shot?
It's kind of nature. One of the things that I've just kind of come to accustomed to is when I grab my handle, I'm probably just gonna grab it and give it a little tug and just feel, is it unlocked yet? So I may just do that. So obviously it's pretty locked up at the current moment. It's not fully locked up, and then I'll know to adjust it. And then each tripod's locking points are in a different place, especially for fluid heads. So it just comes down to the muscle memory of doing that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. And yeah, no more questions regarding composition at the time. Perfect. So this is a shot applying some of the fundamentals of what we just talked about. So we'll just use this frame as a great example. So what this shot did is it took the depth aspect of it, the leading lines, and the rule of thirds. So currently I have her on, if we can imagine a grid across it, I have her on one of the thirds right here, and then this beam right here is leading lines drawing our eyes to the subject. And then the house right here, and as you can see in the start of the video, is because I pull out from it, the house is the depth. So we have right here, the house is the depth, the leading lines leading you to the subject, and then the background. I would say the biggest thing about the background is this tree right here, kind of creating the separation between where she is in retrospect to like where those back trees are. And so I'll play that clip one more time. So, and then this was also filmed in 24 frames a second, not slow-mo. I film most of my shots in slow-mo, typically. But, yeah, let's see. So yeah, like I said, just creating that depth, bringing it down, leading the lines, and then a slight push in right there at the end. And then we have our lovely cat down there as well.
Not on the camera.
Do we have any other questions regarding that? No? Awesome.
I have one for you.
Yes.
In the film that you did, that we saw,
Yes.
okay. Most of the films that I've seen that someone's done are what we call home movies, and they're pretty bad, you know. They're jerky, they're, you know. I noticed, I watched yours very closely, because I wanted to learn from it. Somehow or other, I'm assuming that these weren't professional actors, these were your friends, somebody you knew.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you put all that together where it looked normal? It looked real. It didn't have the home movie look to it.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. So I think that is also a great question. I think it starts with a couple of fundamentals. So Weston, who was our actor, he was, I would say, especially for one of his first times acting, he had a great job at like portraying the emotion that our actor was feeling. And then the other thing, the second fundamental would be the environment. The shots and scenes that we showed in that film. I mean, one example was the camper. It was dirty, it was filthy, and it was talking about how, he was, in his heart, it was a representation of his heart. And so that's more of like the storytelling side of why that felt so real. It was more of like, regarding the environment, it was more of like representing and showing how he felt inside, but through the film itself, like through the visuals. And his camper was a mess, his room looked destroyed almost to the point. Some of the other locations we had weren't super clean or modern, so I think that really aided it in it. And then another thing would be the sound design. That's a huge part. If I played that film for you without the sound effects and music, you would probably get a totally different film. Like the quality of it, the emotion wouldn't be there as much. So audio it's half the viewing experience. It really is. Audio is. And so having great music and good in-depth sound effects can really help convey those emotions into a deeper. And then also another thing comes down to composition, the shots and angles we chose. You can convey an emotion by simply where you put the camera. If I have the camera and it's pointing down, up, right? This is going to convey more of an evil emotion because it's unsettling. We as humans don't look at each other like that. We're not looking at each other up like that. So it's different and it's uncomfortable in a way. So that can convey an evil emotion when we have the camera pointed down. If we have it pointed up, it conveys an emotion of insignificance. The way the lens works and all that, it's gonna make our actor look smaller, and it's gonna be not quite. It's not gonna feel comfortable in a way subconsciously. Not that it's uncomfortable to watch a camera angle like that, but it's gonna convey that emotion. So, like I said, another thing would be just the angles themselves and being subconscious of how angles make people feel, and just doing the research on that. Another one that makes people that can convey an emotion of worry is actually slightly tilting the camera off axis, because it's like, wait, something's not quite right, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Like what's so wrong? And then if you closely examine, it's because the camera's not actually straight; it's slightly turned. So there's just a few angles that we used in that film to convey some of the emotions, the sadness that he was feeling in the film. Jackson is kind of a great segue in how we bundle all of the footage that we get into a film. So, first I'm going to list off some great editing softwares. Once we have our footage, what are we going to do with it, right? And for editing, that's 80 to 90% of what I'm doing, filmmaking wise. Like it really is. It's sitting on a computer, looking at a bunch of footage. It can be boring at times, it for sure can, but if you have some great footage and you're excited about it, you won't know that you just spent 15 hours on that video. Like, what? 15 hours? Okay, well, I should probably go to bed. It's 3 a.m. But, so yeah, some great ones that I have. I've got a list here. Some more advanced, like if you're really serious and you want to, get into this, but some that you can use on your phone and it's going to tell you exactly what to do and it should be super easy. So the first one, and the one I highly recommend, is CapCut. So CapCut, it's a free mobile app. You can get it on any computer, any phone, and it's going to make it super easy to just take your clips and place them together and add some music and learn the fundamentals. Yes, sir.
Got a question. I see SD cards, they have like 64, 128, 256, and at different speeds. You want to go with a fast speed processing speed on your videos?
Yes,
what
sir.
do you recommend?
So, what I recommend, actually, this was going to be a segment, but we're jumping it right now. So, regarding storage, and you have to be prepared to store a lot more footage. If you think about it, if we are taking 24 pictures a second, right? And then you're gonna film for, maybe it's even if it's a 2-minute clip, that's hundreds, thousands of photos really. that you're gonna have, and obviously it's just strung into a video, but it can become very, very consuming storage wise. So what I use, so this is a cinema camera. This one is meant to do video. It can take photos, but this one's meant to do video. So this one actually has a special card. This is, and I'll bring it over. This is a 1 terabyte SD card.
Wow.
Or I'm sorry, a CFast card. They call them CFast cards. This one can read and write 1,000 gigabytes. 1 gigabyte a second.
You give these away, right? 1 terabyte, 1.785 megabytes per second.
Yeah. So that's gonna be overkill for most
Will that fit in
things.
your regular camera though?
Just cinema cameras, and I'll show you what SD cards I use.
But you have to have extra batteries.
But yeah, so this camera specifically can film in 8K, and then it can also film in 8K RAW, so just like RAW photo, it's just taking the sensor and doing it in video. And so 8K RAW at 60 frames a second is 1.5 gigabytes every second of footage. So actually, we filmed Miss Afton's music video. Her project was 4 terabytes of storage. So it can become very expensive, but for most of the things you guys are doing, you're probably going to be filming in 4K or 1080p, and are going to probably have a photo camera first anyways. So I would recommend, I use specifically, this is a Samsung, and I'll bring it over here in just a second to anyone who wants to look. I always use micro SD cards, and then I convert it because you never know where you're gonna have to edit. So I always want to be prepared with like readers. So if someone only has a micro SD card, or I forgot, a reader, so I specifically, that's a personal preference. I always use micro, convert it, but the one I'm using right now is the Samsung 512 gigabyte model. This one can read and write 90 megabytes a second. So that's typical for most cards. I think this card specifically is going to cost you $40, so not too expensive. And then you can get a 32 gigabyte model or less than that at much significant rate. I think you can get some gigabyte cards as low as like $8, and it's going to be just as fast as this one, just less storage. Yes, sir.
I've done a little video, funerals and stuff, and litigation or some legal stuff, but my camera was limited to like 20 minutes, and they'd have to restart it. Are you running
Yes.
the same thing?
So
It's
that
hard.
is actually a limitation of the camera due to the warranty. And so I know may sound a little confusing, but camera manufacturers, a couple of years back, I think it was about 10 years back, they would have to, it would cost them more money licensing wise if they claimed their camera as a cinema camera. And so they had to limit record times on their photo cameras so they didn't have to claim it as a cinema camera, I think for tax reasons. And so that's why that is. That has since been lifted, so this camera right here can film it indefinitely as long as it's got space and battery. At almost all records, at 120 frames a second, I only can get 10 minutes, which you're never filming at 120 frames a second for longer than 30 seconds, generally. This one can record indefinitely, like for any frame rate, this camera right here. And especially because of the battery I have, so this is the battery to the camera.
A drill?
Yes, and I'll bring both of these things around if anyone wants to look at them. But this can run my camera for about 5.5 hours, nonstop. So super nice. And then, as you saw, I just put it on, and then with a click, it's off. Can put a new one on. So super nice. But I'll bring this around if anyone would
How
like
much
to
do
look
those
at them.
batteries cost?
This battery right here, this one was $100. It really isn't bad. But this is the cheapest model you can pretty much get though. So they can easily range up into the $400 to $500 range. But would anyone like to see the battery specifically? Did you want to look at the SD card?
Yes, sir.
Could use your thumbnail.
Okay.
No worries. Now I just stepped on it. Did you get that, Billy?
Oh, yeah. We know who did.
You don't let me at home very often.
So why are you using micro SD?
It's really personal preference because I sometimes I have a client specifically, that's why I started using this. For his own computer, he only had a micro SD card reader. And so I just started buying one like this, and I'm like, there's no downside for at least for video to use this with an adapter. So I'd rather be able to use every type of adapter instead of just like the bigger cards. And typically those cost more
They're
too.
more limited in size,
No.
capacity.
So, like 5 years ago they were, but you can get micro SD cards now that are 2 to 3 terabytes. Now those are going to cost you quite a bit of money, but yeah, you can. So, actually, the most cost-effective storage when you get into the terabyte realm is actually the CFast. I believe that this SD card was $200, and so. If you did that with an SD card, you could be looking at $300. So this media is cheaper SD card wise, but if you're using this, you're most likely going to have more storage regardless. So in the long run, you'll be paying more because if you're using a camera that takes this, it's going to have more data that it creates in a given time. So I think I can film 30 minutes in 8K RAW with this. But I don't typically film in 8K RAW that often, so I can get about, I think it was 8 hours on it if I'm filming in 4K, so drastic difference. And then another thing is SSDs. So when we're editing, and it was a great point when you mentioned up like the speed of something, you cannot edit off of SD cards. You can edit off of CFast, they're fast enough because they've got 1.5 gigabytes, they can do a second, but you're not going to find an SD card that can do that. They can't edit at those speeds. You're going to need to invest in some SSDs, those are solid state drives, or HDDs. But for editing specifically, you're going to need an SSD because they're fast enough. If not, you'll experience lag, slowdowns, potential crashes, and losing all of your media altogether. So you have to be careful and make sure that you're using the right storage when editing projects. And SSDs, they can get quite expensive, so my system is I have 2 SSDs. They're both 1 terabyte each, and so I keep projects on each of those. When I'm done with the project, I offload it to my, I think it's my 12 terabyte server, and I put it all on there and store it there. 12 terabytes is not enough, by the way. I probably need about 40. I project that I'll probably have about 40 terabytes of stuff by the end of next year. So, go ahead and do that.
Wow.
So
What kind of SSD cards are you using?
the SD cards or SSDs?
SSD, what kind are you
So
using?
I do all Samsung. I don't trust SanDisk. That's personal preference, though. I've heard some horror stories with those.
Yeah, I just,
So yeah, personally I'm all Samsung, but I don't see any problem necessarily with them. I just have some close friends who've had issues with SanDisk, and so I just chose Samsung. So that's more brand loyalty than it is SanDisk is necessarily worse. But do your research and never buy any used SSDs or SD cards, whatever, because memory eventually fails regardless. And so you need to have backups and be prepared and know that these are perishable products. SD cards, any storage method is going to perish eventually. So just know that that is a consumable. Yes?
You put anything on the cloud?
So for what I do, and also because my Wi-Fi is very slow at my house, I would love to store in the cloud, but it's just too expensive. For me, I think I priced out like a OneDrive. If I wanted 15 terabytes, it was going to be about $300 a month. So I can't afford that. And then 15 terabytes isn't enough actually. So they can't support those big workflows. For sending projects over and finished videos, I do use OneDrive and Google Drive because an exported project, even though I may have filmed a project that was 4 terabytes, for example, after this music video, I don't think it'll be more than 1 gigabyte, the actual finished video, like the finished product. So I store a lot of my finished projects into the cloud. And then if something was to ever happen, well, it'd be unfortunate that I lost that footage, but the finished product, I will always have that. But yeah, that's a great concern. Yes.
No losing.
Well, yes, I haven't lost anything yet, and I have redundancy. Not enough redundancy. You never have enough redundancy, but Yeah, and just also, like I said, just knowing that these things will fail and being prepared to fix them, and make sure to check with the manufacturer and see how long they estimate that those will last, and then plan accordingly. If it says 5 years, I would replace it in 3 years. So whatever it says. Any more questions regarding storage? Yes.
So I had I shot a wedding here a while back, and about halfway through the wedding, I started getting the flashing hot card
Yeah.
in my camera.
Yeah.
Is that a card problem, or?
So that is gonna be a card problem, yeah.
So-
So the cards will start heating up too hot when it's not, like, it's working too hard. So, even though like this card's rated for 90 megabytes, I'm gonna start getting problems if I'm filming at 80 for an extended period of time. So, it can do my 4K 60 on here, but if I filmed a whole wedding in 4K 60, this card specifically would probably start to heat up. So, one thing that I have in this system, in both of these cameras, is dual SD card slots. So if that was to happen, I just switch to the next SD card, let it cool down, and continue.
That's what I did.
And it's also really good though, if you're not doing it that way, like I said, I do it that way. If it heats up, I just switch to the next card. But you can also just film backup media. They're called proxies. So with this camera specifically, since this one doesn't have the issue because it has a built-in fan to cool everything down, I will film proxies, and proxies are just lower quality versions of the media at a much more compressed file size. So if something was to happen, at least I'll still have the footage. It won't be as high quality, but I have it, right? So if I'm filming in 4K, this will probably take a 1080 quality video and then store it, but then it will also do 8-bit. And so the bit rate is gonna also dictate how much storage. So if you guys switched any of your cameras into video, I have to assume it'll be filming in 10-bit. So if storage is an issue, I would look on their website at a user manual and see how you can change it to 8-bit. You'll lose less color information, but if storage is an issue, you can change it. And again, that's just 8 and 10-bit. And then it can, if you got a high-end cinema camera, it may be 16 to even higher than that, 16-bit. So just be wary of that if storage is an issue. And that could actually solve your SD card problem. If you're filming in 4K, you could do 4K 8-bit, and that could save it.
I'll check on that.
All right. And so the next thing I'm going to talk about is, in editing, is log profiles. Is anyone familiar with log? Yes. So what log is in video, because what photo has is, I'm sure all of us probably shoot in RAW, right? And when we put that photo into the computer, we're seeing an image that is still pretty colored. I would say you could use most RAW images out the gate. I mean, of course, we're gonna edit them, we're gonna push them, we'll make them like way better than actually when we took the photo. But for video, we film in something called log. And log basically takes your image and makes it look super desaturated, and you're like, this looks like garbage. But what it really is allowing you to do is make it even more colorful, because when you're filming in most videos, you're not filming, most of the time when you're filming video, you're filming like if it was a JPEG photo, is really what that is. It's the equivalent of that. Unless, like I said, you have a higher end camera, this films in RAW. So then I don't film in C-Log because I have that information stored. So if your camera has it, again, it differs between cameras. So again, go to the manufacturer's website, look if your camera does have log, and if you're filming video, film at that. And then in just a moment, we'll talk about how you make it look pretty again when you film in log. Yeah, yes, sir.
He has hearing problems, so he's just
Oh.
double checking
Do I need to
that
speak
you
louder?
said. No,
No,
you're
okay,
good.
okay. And so, this wrong way. So, yeah, just to kind of wrap up the list of editing software. So, like I said, CapCut, it's free. If you guys want to explore it, it's gonna be pretty easy. My top recommendation, though, if you have an Apple product, would be iMovie. It's gonna be the easiest to use. If you don't have an Apple product, then CapCut would be my recommendation. And I'm sure if you want, you can go onto YouTube or onto Google, and you can find a 5-minute tutorial and know how to do your first editing session, you know, with all of your clips. And like I said, they're gonna make it super easy. Their goal, these two softwares, CapCut and iMovie, are to make it as easy as possible. That's their goal. It's not to make it the prettiest film ever. They just want you to have a great time editing. So those are gonna have great tools like that. Now, to touch on filming in log. So if you do film in log, you're gonna wanna do something called color grading. And obviously if you guys have done photos, you're very familiar with this process. And it's gonna be very much the same process. There's actually very little different in that sense, except for if there is movement from different buildings, the color temperature of the footage could change. And that's a bit more of an advanced technique, but you would have to adjust the color temperature as the shot moves. And like I said, that's a bit more advanced, but these editing softwares, I'm pretty sure will do it for you. And then you can learn how to if you want to expand your craft regarding color grading. Also regarding CapCut and iMovie, they're gonna have the most basic color grading tools. You're gonna look at it and you're gonna go, oh, this doesn't really work for me. This isn't, because especially if you guys use Lightroom, it's amazing, right? It's got so much versatility, you're really able to push it. So what I would recommend is a software called DaVinci Resolve. Now, DaVinci Resolve is gonna, in the color grading process, DaVinci Resolve will feel very familiar for those who have done Lightroom. But editing is very much more advanced. This is the software I personally use to do all my projects, and it's also free if you want the free version of it. It comes with 80% of the tools. I personally use the paid version, which is one-time payment, no subscriptions, which is really nice. But I would not recommend this unless you are really serious and you want to take this to a business level. If you guys want to just explore filmmaking and video, then again, CapCut and iMovie would be my recommendations. If you want something a little more, if you're saying, well, okay, CapCut's too simple, iMovie's too simple, and DaVinci Resolve's too complicated. If you have an Apple system, my top recommendation would be Final Cut Pro. This is not a free software. This software costs $300 one-time purchase, but it's going to be the most user-friendly but professional software. I used this software personally for a couple of years when I was first starting out. It's very nice, it's very easy to use, and it's got more tools than most, but like I said, it's not free. So if you're wanting something a little bit more powerful, but you don't want to go to DaVinci Resolve, which like a big chunk of movies are edited on, so like if that gives a scale of how advanced it is. Like I said, Final Cut Pro is a great option. The other one we have is Adobe Premiere Rush. This is another free alternative. This one, again, is going to be a little more, if you want a little more out of your editing software, if you want something that is slightly more advanced, but still user-friendly, I would recommend this option. For those who do not have an Apple system. This one will have less features than Final Cut Pro, but will be better than CapCut and iMovie. Before we move on to a little bit deeper to the color grading process, does anyone have any questions regarding the softwares, any questions, thoughts, prices on anything? No? Perfect,
Can you
okay.
hold that a minute? He
Yeah.
needs to take a picture of it so he can read.
Yeah.
The writing's a little too small.
Are you able to share this presentation?
Yes, I can. I can share this presentation with the entire group if they would like.
Everybody's doing something.
Oh, here, I can zoom in as
Oh,
well.
there you go.
Oh, there you go.
What section were you wanting to look at?
Just the names, I think.
Whole thing?
There we go.
Got it?
Got it.
Thank you,
Yeah, and
Sebastian.
we'll figure out a way to make this presentation available to everyone after the event. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so now I'm going to finally touch on the color grading process a little bit more in depth. A route that people can go if they want more features than what CapCut and iMovie offer. My recommendation would be to download one of those softwares, but then also download DaVinci Resolve and only use the color page because it's going to feel very familiar to any color grading software that you've used with I'm trying to blank on the name. Lightroom, thank you. Lightroom, Photoshop is gonna feel much more familiar to that. So for those who have more experience color grading and you want to take the footage to the next level, but then you're not ready to edit in it, it has a very seamless and very easy process to put the footage into DaVinci Resolve and color it, and then go and take it into another software. Actually, most movies are color graded in DaVinci Resolve and then edit it in a different software, just depending on the person's workflow. Some of the big name softwares are going to be a software called Flame. That software is, I've never used it. It's very expensive actually, it's $4,000 a month. It's crazy, yeah, it's very crazy, and but they'll still, even though they've got that software, they're still coming back to free DaVinci Resolve, like the free software DaVinci Resolve to do their color grading. So I think it's a real testament to what DaVinci Resolve is offering, and that's why I personally use it for the entire process with video editing. But so yeah, if that's, does anyone have any questions about the software or color grading more in depth, or have questions about DaVinci Resolve's process? Okay, awesome. So now I'm gonna play to you guys some of the projects I've worked on that we've recently done, and this is just taking all of the steps we've talked about and with practice of course, but applying all the steps we talked about and making it into a video. And then after that, if you guys have questions, we'll talk about that more just as an overall for the entire presentation.
Do we want to turn off the lights?
Do you want the lights?
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Dude.
So this one is from a client of mine. Her name is Amanda. She sells a sourdough bread making kit, and this is her Amazon ad. And so what I mean by that is this is what gets played in front of people if they were searching on Amazon or on YouTube. This is an ad that will be played for that will bring them to the listing that has more information. So if you're wondering, well, I don't actually quite know much about the product, that's not what this video is for. This video is to create an emotion. And so in film, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an emotion. And so if you examine most ads on TV, they're not actually telling you about the product unless it's medicine specifically. They're just trying to make you feel an emotion that makes you want to dig deeper. A great example of this is insurance ads. They don't really talk about how their insurance is really great.
Right.
They just talk about that it's going to make the process easy, and then maybe I'm thinking of the Liberty one with the ostrich, right? And we all know about the ostrich because all they were trying to do was spark an emotion, and that's why we remember about it. So that's just a little bit about the philosophy of ads, and just as something to think about. Like next time you guys are watching ad, is this telling me about the product? Is that what this is doing? Or is this making an emotion so I can remember it and think about it later? Like Coke, I mean, there's no value add. They don't add actually any value other than flavor, like the flavor and the experience. So they're never listing off their health benefits, right? Yeah. So they have to sell you on the emotion to buy Coke. Because the other thing is, we don't buy anything, like I said for Coke, there's no benefit to us when we drink Coke, but we still buy it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the emotion and how film can be used. And that's also, it's also important to know, if you can sell someone on Coke, which I enjoy Coke, I don't drink it often, but I do like the flavor of it, but it has no benefits to me. It can be used as a weapon. Film can be used as a weapon if you don't use it correctly, because you can sell yourself, and you can sell things or services or whatever it may be. So you just need to, like when you're making film or if you're doing client work, you need to make sure that first off, you're okay with what's happening in the film. What does it, and I think this actually leads into a lot of the previous presentation that I was part of that you had. It has to align with your moral values first off, because film can be dangerous. It can actually be a weapon. And so like I said, you have to protect yourself first off, and then make sure that this is something you're okay promoting and creating, because like I said, you can sell people and stuff that has no value to them and hurt them in the long run. Like I said, great example is Coke. They're just selling you on the flavor and the experience of it. There's nothing at it. Yes?
I was just gonna say, that's a subliminal cut, is what it is.
Yeah, subliminal, yeah.
Yeah, in case
Absolutely.
nobody's heard of that, they used to do that They still do it, especially with the advertising.
Yeah, it's even
Teaching
worse
us
now too, as we understand more about the human brain and how emotions, advertisers are able to maliciously create content that hurts people. And so, as long as we, protect ourselves and we, make sure we're cautious about what we create, because you don't wanna hurt someone with that. I mean, it could and I continue to use the example because it's the most prominent. There's nothing there's nothing it adds, and so those advertisers are creating an emotion. That's the foundation of that. So next time you guys watch an ad, take a step back, think about that. Think about what's actually happening in the ad. Think about are they describing details of a product, or are they really just selling me on an emotion? It's just a great exercise, and it ruined ads for you guys forever. So you're
Well, they were already.
all right. If we could hit the lights, please. Thank you so much. Oh, the audio is not playing. Let's see. There we go.
Life is filled with wonderful little moments, and each one needs to be cherished. At Good Leaven Co., we're here to help with tools that make it easy so you can focus on Grandma's famous family recipe. Good Leaven Co. Sourdough made simple.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Thank you. Can we turn on the lights, please? Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that? We do want to play it again. I know it was short, and then we have another one that I'm going to show after this. But does anyone have questions about that?
What was the speed of filming?
So the speed of filming. So I filmed. All of it was in 60 frames a second.
Okay.
So all of that was slowed down in post, and then I filmed.
Yeah.
I filmed almost all of it, 80% of it, handheld, like this, just doing this right here, using that, and then I use my monitor to view. This is much brighter, much bigger, it's just easier to film, because I can't use the viewfinder to if it's a bright situation. So I just, do that, and that was pretty much all of it. And then also not being afraid to retry. You saw that 30-second ad was the culmination of over 15 plus hours of work, like filming and editing, not just the planning and the meetings and all the calls and all that we had. So it can be very time consuming. So don't be discouraged if you're filming and you're like, this shot just isn't going right. Trust me, everyone films each shot about 30 times. Like really, I mean,
How many times you did that?
yeah, you can just reshoot. And that's why I link a lot of videographers steer, a couple that I know, they like to steer away from events because there is no retry, and those are very stressful, especially weddings. I know you said you've done a wedding. I'm sure you can testify as well. I mean, you can't redo a moment like that, and so those can be definitely a lot. And so if you're going, and if you guys have I've done photography for wedding, you know the feeling as well of like having to make sure you get the shot. It's just when you have video, you're adding extra elements. Not only do I have to make sure I'm in the frame, I have to make sure that I'm ready for when they walk down the aisle, like movement wise, and is the lighting, and obviously lighting applies to photo as well, but then audio, do I need to get the officiant in there, and them if they're saying their vows, all of that on top of making sure you actually have them in frame. So yeah, do you guys want me to play one more time, or we want to move on?
No, it worked though. I'm really hungry for some sourdough bread.
The child, it's like, oh my gosh.
Alright, and so this next one, this is my good friend Charlie Brown. This is her ad that we created for her. This one's probably one of my personal favorites that we've done. So I'm super excited to show you guys this. Thank you.
Spending time with flowers is so peaceful. Every bloom has its own unique purpose in an arrangement. That smile on someone's face when they see one of my floral arrangements and the happiness that it brings them, that feeling is priceless. We discover the beauty of things when we slow down and focus on what's pure and lovely. I think my calling is to help people find that. My name is Charlie Brown, I'm 15, and I am Bloom Chicka Bloom.
Very nice.
Where'd you get that chicken?
Where was that field? That looks so
the
pretty.
field, where was
Well,
that?
Right around the corner.
Brantford, it's in Brantford,
Farm
the
stand?
Farm
farm
stand.
stand,
Oh,
yeah.
I was wondering.
Oh,
I was
okay.
wondering.
When they had all their zinnias and sunflowers blooming.
Did you guys have to build a swing set?
No, that was there.
That was there,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that was there.
It seemed like it was out there, yeah.
It wasn't there the first year that I went, and
Okay.
when we went for the video, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this, this is so cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That was like one of the hottest days.
Oh my gosh.
It was so hot. I was drenched. I mean, we all were just like it was. What you don't see is like all of the reshoots and us just dying to the heat. But yeah, so guys, thank you so much for your time tonight. That's and just a final recap. No questions.
I have
Yes.
one more question.
Yes.
And this is more on a personal note,
Yeah.
so you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you're 15. I mean, when did you start this? You're doing like someone that's in their 50. I mean, you know so much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So it came from a love of YouTube, really. My filmmaking, like my want to do that. Since I was as young as I can remember, really, I think four, I wanted to start a YouTube channel specifically. And I didn't do anything with it until I was about 11 when I got my first computer and I was actually able to do stuff. And I was really into gaming. I don't do that much anymore, but I was doing that. I was like, oh, I want to make a YouTube channel on this. I saw all these creators I was watching. They were super successful doing this. But what I really found out is I fell in love with the editing of it. And then I was like, I wanted to spend more time editing than I did once to play video games. And then I was like, well, I'm just filming my screen on this video game. There's no creative like expression through the footage itself. And so then I wanted to start filming, the actual footage of it. And then once, I filmed my first project. It was for another friend. It was a birthday video. To surprise her for his birthday, and that was the moment. I was hooked on filmmaking, and it was 11 or 12. I don't know. Was it 12?
You made the Otter Springs for CC
that,
at
yes.
11.
11. So yeah, 11. I didn't film the Otter Springs one.
I did.
She filmed it, but the first time I got to film the project was for our friend's birthday video. That's when I was like, this is definitely it. And
Good for you.
And yeah, so now I'm 15 and I run my business, Meant to Be Media. If you guys like to see more of my work, go to meanttobemedia.net. And yeah, thank you guys again so much.
Make sure we
Yeah,
zoom
yes.
in on that web address.
How much would
please.
you say that homeschooling has played into your success and
yeah.
passion?
Yeah, like 110%. Yeah, no, and
111 if we're generous.
yeah, no, the freedom of homeschooling and being able to, follow that passion and not be confined really to a predetermined schedule and course and curriculum allowed me to explore myself really and what I wanted to do. I don't think I'd be where I was if I wasn't in homeschool. Even if I had the same amount of hours, even if I was doing school for 8 hours, which I'm not, but if I was, I don't think I would have discovered filmmaking the same. Even if, so. Absolutely, and to my parents and my family, I would not be there without them either. They're the most supportive.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation. To learn more about the Branford Camera Club, please come to one of our meetings.